There's nothing like playing against a Matt Eberflus defense to solve a lot of your problems on offense and leave you feeling a lot more confident in the direction of the Chicago Bears.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like the players, Mazda sweats every details because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. So stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be move. On the show today, we look at what this Bears offense was able to do and how it feels like this was a lot of that offensive formula of Ben Johnson finally coming together. We also look at a Bears defense that found a way to slow down Dak Prescott and a Cowboys offense that had been high-flying in the weeks before, even if it wasn't certainly perfect on either side of the ball. And along those same lines, we'll take a look at some of the things the Bears do need to still keep getting better at, despite how strong they looked in week 3. But I think the thing I come taking away from this Bears offensive performance, more than anything else, was like, this feels like, at least in the passing game, what the Ben Johnson offensive formula is supposed to look like. The whole idea of why you hired Ben Johnson was on display against this Cowboys defense, and it feels like this was a nice sort of proof of concept and showing you like, yes, that's what this is supposed to look like, and that is us seeing it working the way it is supposed to. Because the whole idea of taking what Ben Johnson did with Jared Goff and applying it to Caleb Williams is the idea that there's going to be a structure, a system that Caleb Williams can lean on and rely on, and that's going to be the bread and butter for what is 80% of your offense or whatever number you want to put on that, where you got a 3 or a 5-step drop or whatever it is, and on your back foot here, you look to this receiver, you hitch, you look to that receiver, and if it's not there, then check it down, right? It's precise footwork and timing alignment to get rid of the ball quickly and decisively to an open receiver. And we saw a lot of that in this game. And then on some plays, there's just always going to be times when you can't follow the structure perfectly. Either there's an offensive line breakdown, or there's a blitz that forces you to change things up, or your receivers are covered, or whatever it's going to be. There are going to be plays when you do your drop and your hitch, and nothing that's supposed to be there is there, or it's just not the way it's supposed to be for the quarterback. And that's when you need your quarterback to be able to make plays outside of structure, outside of the pocket, scrambling and extending plays and finding an open receiver. And we've known that Caleb Williams has always been able to do that aspect, but too often in recent Bears history, the whole offense has relied on that. They haven't been able to get anything going in the structure, and they've just required Caleb Williams to have to be that playmaker when the offensive line fails and no one's open and scrambling around and trying to do something. And in this game, we got to see both, and the right mixture of both, because you don't want to clamp down Caleb Williams too much and say, hey, don't scramble around, don't make plays, don't be don't do any of that stuff, just be robo quarterback, because that takes away some of what makes him special. But you don't want to have him do it all the time. And this game felt like the perfect mix of both. Like, you're never calling for the playmaking, but the idea is like they got the structure to be the regular 70, 80% of the whatever rate you want to call it. And then when they needed him to make plays, he did. But they didn't ask him to do it all the time, but he did it when they needed him to. And that to me is like the passing game formula that we were promised and are now really seeing fully executed for the first time. That is in part because of a better pass protection in front of him than we had seen the first 2 weeks. Some of that may be because of the offensive line settling in a little bit. I think a lot of it is also reflected by the Dallas Cowboys' general lack of pass rush. Without Micah Parsons, they don't get a ton of consistent push up front. And so Caleb had a lot of time in the pocket for plays to develop. Not that he's holding on to it for 4 seconds, but just that he doesn't have to be rushed, and he can trust that he can go through his progressions and not hurry some of those throws that end up getting overthrown or underthrown because he doesn't set his feet properly and follow through with the proper mechanics from the quarterback position. That's where you then get to the deep shots finally connecting because he has the time, because he has the confidence, because he has the experience building in this offense to connect with Luther Burden. It's something we talked about last week on the podcast. I don't remember if it was Thursday or Friday, but I said on this show, Luther Burden's going to get a couple of deep shots in this game. I wasn't sure if they would connect, but I knew Luther Burden was going to get a couple of deep attempts in his area. And of course, hits him. Of course, the flea flicker 60-plus yard touchdown was the biggest of them. But like, those are the kind of big explosive plays then that open everything up. And then you add in first ever game for Caleb Williams' NFL career without a sack. And you don't have those negative plays holding the offense back. Only a couple of offensive penalties. No false starts as far as I can remember going back through this game. And it all builds this consistent offensive force. Even when the running game, at least the handoffs to Swift and Monangai weren't working well, Ben Johnson finds ways to overcome and be creative. You have that 19-play drive in the third quarter where they end up going 11 straight runs on that drive. Despite DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai both averaging, I think, fewer than 3 yards per carry in this game, they could still sustain a drive running 11 straight times because Ben Johnson found ways to get creative and manufacture a ground game in different ways. So they do a DeAndre Swift handoff for 2 yards, and then a Caleb Williams read option, and he'd keep it, and he'd get 6 or 8 yards to give him third and short or move the chains. And they hand it off to Monangai for 2 yards. And then they do the wide receiver handoff to Olamide Zaccheaus on a jet sweep or end around, or they put DJ Moore in the backfield for a play or two. Like they just kept sprinkling in different things to manufacture an overall running game, even when the traditional handoffs to Swift and Monangai in the backfield weren't quite working the way that they needed it to. And that's something that I think is even more, I don't say even more encouraging about the Bears offense, but like the offense moved the ball pretty, I don't want to say effortlessly, but very effectively in this game without a running game. And the running game is supposed to be a huge part of what Ben Johnson's offense is and wants to be. So the fact that they put up 31 and have a lot of success against the Cowboys defense without that running game tells you just how much better this Bears offense can still be. And as albeit against the Matt Eberflus defense that is missing Micah Parsons, injuries at corner, doesn't have a pass rush, can't cover. Like, some of this was inflated against a bad Dallas Cowboys defense, for sure. The Bears are not going to look this sharp on offense every single week, but it's nice to really see it coming together. And it's also nice to know this was not their peak form, that they can, should, and will continue to get better in other ways that we'll get into some of the further improvements still to come a little bit later on the podcast. But I also want to look at this Bears defense that definitely took real steps forward against a good Dallas Cowboys offense. And I want to try and look at how they found a way to generate a pass rush and cover some receivers despite all the injuries they have. Next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. See, you and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. And with football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. So you could select more or less on Caleb Williams' passing yards, DeAndre Swift's rushing yards, Rome Odunze's receiving yards, or any other team, any other sport, all in the PrizePicks app. And if you get your picks right, you're going to win real cash for your opinion. So download the PrizePicks app today and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. This Bears defense played better than I thought they would. And I'm still not, I still don't have a singular definitive answer as to how and why, but I have a couple of theories I'd like to run past you here. And I think first and foremost is we perhaps overestimated the Cowboys' offensive line. It was worse than I thought it would be. And then that helped the Bears generate more of a pass rush, make Dak Prescott more uncomfortable, and then as a result, disrupt some of what Dallas wanted to do on offense. But I'm not totally convinced that it's all that, because like even the week before, right, where they were in a shootout with the Giants, like the Giants defense isn't, maybe not great, but they certainly have pass rushers. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and Chicago Bears legend Roy Robertson Harris. Like the Giants have a more talented group of pass rushers on defense than what the Bears do. And yet it felt like the Bears were having a lot more success pressuring Dak Prescott and disrupting this Cowboys pass protection than what the Giants could last week. So that one still confounds me a little bit. Like Montez Sweat played a lot better, got his first sack of the season, although he had one last week that didn't count because of penalties. And generally, I think consistently was winning pass rushes, generating pressure, even when he wasn't always finishing every play at home at the quarterback. Jerron Dexter had a bunch of great pressure in the middle too. Like some of this is just Bears players played better. Like they were just better. Grady Jarrett felt like he was a little bit better. Dominique Robinson had his first solo sack since his rookie season of 2022 when he just stepped right around the left tackle and made a beeline to Dak Prescott. Like some of that stuff is just like guys playing well. And I don't know if they were extra motivated to play against Matt Eberflus on the other side. I don't know if it was just like the natural, blank on the word, regression, a positive regression where they were playing below their standards. So just they were generally going to trend back to playing at a higher level because that's what the baseline is for guys like Montez Sweat and Grady Jarrett. And I also think some of it was Dennis Allen getting a little bit more creative with his front. And I think he blitzed a little bit more often. I got to have to double check the numbers with that. It felt like he blitzed a little bit more often and showed blitz a lot. And I think didn't necessarily confuse Dak Prescott because you're not really confusing a veteran quarterback with that at this point. But maybe some of the Cowboys offensive linemen had more trouble with that communication that causes more of the issues there up front. So I think that's a big part of it. I think another big part of this that it sounds obvious, but I want to make sure we don't just overlook, like the Cowboys losing CeeDee Lamb to injury early in this game. It was absolutely game-changing. I mean, they scored on their first drive with CeeDee Lamb out there, and then without him, they really struggled to score the rest of the game. And it's not that, one wide receiver is the difference between the Cowboys winning and losing necessarily, but I think CeeDee Lamb can be the difference between a 31-14 final score and a 31-21 or even a 31-28 type of final score, given the Bears' struggles at cornerback. Like, you're a lot less worried about Nashawn Wright getting consistently beaten by, Turpin and to some extent George Pickens than CeeDee Lamb, who could put up 150, 200 yards against a bad cornerback. That's just part of it here. But Tyreek Stevenson had a really, really strong game. Great in coverage, ripped out the forced fumble early in that game. That wasn't the first drive, but it was it the first drive of the game? It was one of the first drives of the game. Like, he was good. Had a couple pass breakups in there, and he was in on coverage on a couple of those interceptions where he didn't get the interception, but it was, he was helping in the coverage there that, led to the interceptions thrown by Dak Prescott as well. So I think that was really, really encouraging there. And then I think Dennis Allen also very clearly wanted to take away the deep plays from the Cowboys offense. And so they said, screw it. We're putting two deep safeties back there a lot. And all Dak Prescott could do all game was throw short, like over and over again to Jake Ferguson. You look at Dak Prescott's passing chart from the game. He had two throws that went 20 or more yards downfield and only a handful that went 10 or more. The vast majority of throws were under 10 yards and a lot of passes behind the line of scrimmage there that just, they couldn't get explosive plays. And so the Cowboys had to go down the field, 4 or 5 yards at a time. And so that requires you to go, if you're starting at your own 20 and you're going to go 5 yards at a time, that would be 80 yards. Let's do some high school math here. 80 divided by 5 is 10 and 16. It would take you 16 plays to go down the field 5 yards at a time. And it's very hard for NFL offenses to sustain 16 play drives over and over again. Along the way, you get mistakes. You get penalties that put you behind the sticks. You get drop passes. You get sacks. You get pressures. You get blown up plays in the backfield. And that's kind of the formula for the Bears defense. Like, hey, don't give them anything big and make them consistently get those short plays down the field. Like, that's why even though they kind of struggled to stop the running game, like, it didn't make that big of a difference because it didn't allow the big runs. It was just a lot of 5, 6, 7 yard runs that can add up, but then you add in that, the Bears offense was ahead, so the Cowboys couldn't run the ball as much as they would want to. They had to throw, which makes the pass rush's job easier, makes the coverage guys' job easier because they're not trying to read, run, or pass. They just know they got to get back in coverage. And so, like the Cowboys got 8 completions, I think was the initial stat. Deshaun Wright in coverage was targeted 9 times, gave up 8 catches for a lot of yards. Noah Sewell targeted 9 times, gave up 9 catches, mostly to Jake Ferguson. Like, they were getting a lot of completions, but it was all 3 yards here, 4 yards here, 6 yards there. And then when you add in the pressure that the Bears were able to generate on Dak Prescott, and then, you got lucky on the first interception for sure when it hits George Pickens in the hands, and then he drops it, and Tremaine Edmonds dives and intercepts it. Great play by Tremaine Edmonds, but that wasn't genius scheming or a bad throw by Dak Prescott. The wide receiver gave you one there. Like, luck is always a little bit of a factor here too. Same with pulling the ball out of Javonte Williams' hands on that early handoff, right? Like, I think it's a combination of all these things that helped mask some of the Bears' deficiencies and help the defense play a lot better. Now, I don't think defense is all of a sudden solved, and they're going to hold every team to 14 points a game. Now, from here on out, definitely still some real question marks there, especially as you start to face some really good offenses again. But I think it does make a difference when you go from Justin Jefferson in week 1 and then, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams in week 2. And then once you take CeeDee Lamb out of the game in week 3, a lot easier matchup for them on the back end. But also guys played better. I think Dennis Allen called plays a little bit better, schemed them up a little bit better, and it all came together really, really nicely there and gave them a lot to be able to build off of moving forward to where you feel like they're making some real progress here. And also felt like fewer defensive penalties too, all around fewer penalties. Still a couple here and there, but you weren't giving the Cowboys a bunch of free plays and free yards and, stuff that made their life that much easier as well. Now, all this being said, real progress, a lot to celebrate. Bears have improved. But they need to keep getting better because there were still real flaws and real mistakes against the Cowboys that didn't hurt them in this game. But, eventually you're going to play the Commanders, the Packers, the Ravens, the Eagles, and the progress needs to keep continuing from here. So we'll take a look at some of the stuff that needs to get better. And I think the way to look at this is hey, the Bears played really well in spite of these things going wrong. So think about how much better this Bears team can still be. That's next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. And for me, this week's moment that moved the game forward is the flea flicker touchdown pass to Luther Burden, because of what it represented and because of where it came in the game. That play comes right after Dak Prescott and the Cowboys drive down and score. They match the Bears touchdown for touchdown. And it's this is going to be a shootout and the Bears are going to need to be able to score on every play. And are they going to be able to stop Dak Prescott? Oh no. What's going to happen? And the very first play after that Cowboys touchdown, Ben Johnson digs in his bag, pulls out a flea flicker, and it's not even a well-executed flea flicker from DeAndre Swift. Floats it way up in the air, and we're like, oh, no. And then, oh, yes, Luther Burden wide open for the deep touchdown, getting the rookie involved, getting the trick plays going. This is the Ben Johnson passing offense and the perfect answer to the Cowboys' touchdown drive. That moved the game forward. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Because right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So if you want to bet $5 on Bears Raiders next week, where the opening line, Bears are underdogs on the road, 1.5-point underdogs to opening line from FanDuel Sportsbook. The money line, if you want to bet the Bears straight up to win, is minus 108, and the over-under starts at 47.5 points. A $5 bet on any of those or any other bet on any other team, any other sport in the FanDuel app, and you're going to not only get the winnings from hitting on your $5 bet, but then $300 extra in bonus bets to use on anything else. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. So much of what the Bears showed in this game was very real, tangible improvement that should carry over beyond just playing a Matt Eberflus defense. I mean, certainly defensively, the stuff you do to Dak Prescott is real. Like, he's a good quarterback, and they held him down to 14 points. Still, they need to be able to do better, though, when the defenses they face aren't Matt Eberflus's defenses, and it's going to be harder to score 31 points. And the offenses you're going against aren't as leaky on the offensive line, and maybe you're going against a star receiver who's not hurt, and the matchup becomes that much more difficult. So I think a few things stood out to me that we've hinted on a little bit on a couple of them, and then a couple others I want to add to that conversation that still need to keep getting better to add to the progress that we've seen. I mean, first of all, the running game on offense, still abysmal. Still, it's hard to say it's a real problem because you still won the game, but when they hand it off to DeAndre Swift and Kyle Mungai, they're getting less than 3 yards per carry. And even Swift's yardage was inflated by like an 11-yarder that beyond that, he was like fewer than 2 yards per carry on most of those runs for the game. Third and short, they handed off to Swift a couple times and barely got the yard they needed on a couple of third and shorts. And I don't think it's all on the running backs. I know there's the popular yards before and yards after context stat out there, and I do think, don't get me wrong, if you put Saquon Barkley in this Bears offense, you're getting more yards than what you're getting from DeAndre Swift. But I'm not convinced that if you put Saquon Barkley in this Bears offense right now, that you're a top 5 rushing team in the NFL. Run blocking is also a problem here. Like it can be and is both things. How you want to split that pie, is it 60-40 running back versus offensive line? I mean, I don't know that's worth trying to get into the minutia there, but fixing one, not just, you can't just fix one and expect the other one to all of a sudden just be perfectly better either. But I do think run blocking is maybe the more fixable and more tangible issue here. Like, you're not getting Saquon Barkley right now. You got Swift and Mungai. That's kind of what you're stuck with. So can you find ways to block this up better up front, either from a scheme standpoint? Are they better at blocking stretch zone plays? Are they better at blocking downhill gap scheme runs? Can you find something that's going to work more consistently for them? Is Swift better at reading certain run concepts than others? I mean, Ben Johnson got creative by giving the ball to different people in different ways. And, the wide receiver runs and the quarterback runs. Like, he manufactured a running game, but he really does want to be able to go handoff up the middle, downhill, or stretch zones, or whatever it is. Handoff to a running back from the backfield is something core to what they want to do. And I think we'll only see this offense get better as they can find more ways to do that. Same thing is true on the other side of the ball. It didn't kill them in this game that they couldn't stop the Cowboys running game. Javonte Williams was getting 5-6 yards at a time. It felt like, at least 4 every time he was clipping that ball. And it felt like, man, if this Bears offense hadn't built a big lead and forced the Cowboys to abandon their passing game, that could have been a big problem. Like, the Bears offense was their best run defense in this game. And that's not always going to be the case. That's not always going to be a sustainable strategy is, just get a lead so they can't run the ball. We don't have to stop the run if they're not able to run. Like, sure, that's the goal, but not always attainable. And so I'm not sure exactly what the solution is there. I think in a game like this, they wanted to play 2 deep safeties to protect their corners and not have any deep shots, so then they couldn't load up the box as much, and it was sort of a willing sacrifice there. But there's going to be games, heck, you got Ashton Genty next week, where you want to load up the box a little bit more. And is that purely the solution there? I mean, I think guys up front need to be a little bit more stout. Grady Jarrett, Montez Sweat, Dio Dengbo, et cetera. Like, they got to be even more physical in the ground game because they've just given up a little bit too much of the line of scrimmage there, and the linebackers got to come downhill. TJ Edwards missing is definitely a factor in that. It'd be nice to have him back at some point from injury, but easier said than done there. And I still think this Bears pass rush needs to be even better too. Another area was definitely better in this game, but I need to see them do it against a quality offensive line or a better offensive line than this. Like I'm not fully convinced that, the pass rush is just solved now. Sweat is good again. He was bad and now he's good. And Grady Jarrett was bad and now he's good. Like, I'm not so sure. Like, I think they got better, and I think we can trust that they should continue to be improved, but there's a difference between improved and totally solved, and I need to keep seeing more from that group. And then, of course, there's the cornerback injuries are still going to continue to be a question mark there. Nashawn Wright was bad in this game. Tyreek Stevenson was good. Nashawn Wright was bad. I would like an alternative to Nashawn Wright, whether that's Kyler Gordon getting healthy and playing outside and then kicking back into the slot, or maybe just purely play him on the outside. With Nick McLeod's not much better, so pick your poison there. Whether it's Jalen Jones, who they got on waivers, who's now injured, but if he could get healthy, could he be an option to rotate in and compete with him just to push him a little bit more? They promoted Dallas Flowers from the practice squad. I mean, I'd like something at cornerback other than just saying, hey, Nashawn Wright is what we got, so we're going to roll with that. I'm just, not super crazy about that as plan A for your defense. And then on offense, Caleb Williams had a great game. I'm not here to be critical of Caleb Williams. He missed a few throws, a couple of throws in the dirt at players' feet that should have been easy throws, a couple of overthrows that weren't dangerous, never put the ball in harm's way, no risky bad decisions or anything like that. But it goes to show that he threw for almost 300 yards with 4 touchdowns, and he can still be even better. Like, this wasn't even peak Caleb Williams. He had a few more completions in there that absolutely could have pushed him over 300 yards, and he had a 5th touchdown that was sort of kind of dropped by Rome Odunze. He got hit after the ball got there, but you do expect like a top-flight NFL wide receiver to hold on to that pass. And Rome Odunze still has like 1 or 2 kind of drop-type passes like that every week that you would like to be better. Now, it doesn't mean he's still giving you 125-yard games 2 weeks ago. Then you're not so worried about a drop pass here or there. You can live with, I'll take a drop pass every single game if he's catching 6 of them for 70 yards every game and a touchdown. Like, that's absolutely worth it. But again, like, areas that this Bears team can still continue to get better, even as they still looked really good against the Dallas Cowboys. And so all of a sudden now, you face the Raiders next week in what should feel like a winnable game. You can start to talk yourself into being 2-2 going to the bye week. All problems are solved. Everything is hunky-dory, and the Bears are back to full steam ahead to maybe even re-enter the playoff conversation. That's how big a win like this one at the Cowboys can start to cascade for us. I do want to take a closer look at the All-22 film this week, and then also just like what's going to feel the most sustainable from this win and what might feel the least sustainable from this win as we move forward in the Raiders and beyond. So that's going to be coming up this week, probably on tomorrow's Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for a second listen today, be sure to check out the Locked On NFL podcast for a double dose of football action. In the morning, Tyler Rowland gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day. And then the second episode of the day comes out in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, taking you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end your day. So find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Just make sure you're coming back tomorrow. Make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.